there. Welcome to Real Guitar Live. I'm Tomas Michaud from Real Guitar. And today I'm going to do my best to answer all your guitar learning questions. As usual, for those of you who are new, I'll give you a quick rundown on how this goes. I'm going to first look through questions that people have submitted ahead of time and answer those. At the same time, I'll be looking over at the chat and seeing which questions either tie into those or start answering those questions afterwards. Please put the word question in big letters when you ask a question in the chat so I see it right away. My eyes aren't that good anymore. So for me to look down the whole list of chats, I'm bound to miss something. But if you put question, I will see it for sure. And if you ask a question and I miss it, just ask again later and say, I'll catch it that way. So after we answer all the questions, we're going to do a drawing. Every month I do a drawing for members of my Real Guitar Success membership, guitar learning membership. And these are people who have completed the 20 practice sessions for the month. When I say completed, all they had to do was go in there and play with them for 10 minutes and move on if they want, or spend more time if they prefer. And then they get entered into a drawing where I give away a $50 Amazon gift card. So that's the admin stuff for today. Let me get on to answering some questions. I might ask them too. Oh, I see a lot of people already on there. Antonio from the UK. Welcome. Carmen. Yes. And Mark, good to see you there from the Midwest. So, Carmen's from Spain. That's cool. I imagine it's nighttime there. Now, the first question I got is one I've been asked many, many times, and should be asked many times because it is one of the most difficulties that beginners have anyway. Hurry says, I have a problem with switching chords. What can I do? That's one of the biggest things I see with beginning students. If they learn chords, particularly if they learn on their own, they tend to learn a bunch of chords but can't really change smoothly from one to the other. So there's a number of things you can do. Of course, practicing is by far is a big thing. And I know that's easy to say. I get a lot of people say, I practice and practice, and I don't seem to be making any progress. Well, that's where the other tips come in. First of all, it pays to really make sure you can play the chord. And I've seen this over and over. People show me they have a hard time switching chords. I say, well, play that G chord again. And they kind of take a while to finger the chord. I said, well, of course you can't switch to that chord if you can't really finger it quickly and smoothly. Doesn't mean you have to get it perfect every time, but you have to be able to, within a second at most, be able to finger the chord and get your fingers in the right place. So practice each chord separately, and then narrow it down to just switching from one chord to one other chord. This is the other thing I see a lot, and I know I was guilty of it too in the beginning. I would pick a song with 5 chords, and I'd struggle switching from each of those chords. Well, you don't get enough practice switching from any one chord to make progress or to feel like you're making progress. So narrow it down. Go down to where you need to work on that little part. Switching from G to D. Just work on that for a while. So practice the G chords, practice the D chord, and then practice switching slowly from one to the other. Then to up the ante, get some rhythm going, maybe a metronome or even just tap your foot, and then force yourself to change on time. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I'm forcing myself to get on the one of each bar. 4. I leave a little space to give me time to move in the beginning, and that's wise. As you get more experience, you don't need to pay attention to leaving space. So those are just some of the ideas. Of course, I have lessons on specific exercises to practice, but those principles apply to all the exercises and all the lessons when you're learning to switch chords. Break it down to small parts. Make sure you got the chord itself, switch from just one to the other, and then add other chords. Let's go on to the next question. I know the chords, but every time I watch a tutorial on how to play a song, it never sounds like what they're teaching. Any suggestions? It's from John. I can relate to that. This is a great question for me because I remember that being one of the big issues when I was first learning guitar. But as I started teaching, I got clear on where I went wrong, and now I can share it with you. The biggest thing I found with students who had this problem is they're trying to play a song that's way over their head. They're not there yet. So of course the lesson on the song uses a lot of parts, chords or other things that their fingers can't quite get there on time. So no matter what they do, they may be able to follow the lesson, but they're not going to be able to get it in time or well enough to make it sound like the song should sound. The thing is to practice. Whew, the tongue doesn't keep up with my brain. The thing is to go easy and gradation and start building simple songs to more complex and to more complex. If you get to a song that's really hard, either decide you're just going to bang away at it for fun and not expect too much, or back up and go to something that's a little easier and build up to it. I remember a big experience I had when I went to the university, and I signed up for, as part of my program, I get private classical guitar lessons. And this was a big one for me. I'd played rock and roll for years, but I was, fairly new at classical. I'd taken a couple of years of lessons, but that was the bare minimum to get into the university. The teacher looked at me, watched me play some stuff, and then a little bit to my disappointment said, "You're trying to play stuff that's way over your head. You're butchering it. You're killing it." Now I look back and I needed to back up, do some things that would lead me up to the more complex songs and then do them right. And I'm really glad that he told me that, though at the time I didn't feel good about it. Most of my teachers, and this is a dilemma, I digress a little, but it's good to know. It's a dilemma when you pay for lessons with a private teacher, either at home or even in a music school could be. There's a dilemma there because the teacher, if they discourage you too much, you're going to go away and their paycheck's gone. So they often don't want to give you really bad news. A teacher who is not really clear on what they're doing will often defer to the student to tell them what they want to learn, even if it's not something they should be working on. At the university, that wasn't an issue. He got paid whether or not I like what he said, and it really helped me out. And of course, a good private teacher who's really confident and knows what they're doing is not afraid to tell you, no, that's not what you should be working on. You need to do this, this, and this. I'd like to say I'm one of those teachers, though I don't really take private students right now. Hi, Martin. Welcome. So if you're watching this in the recording, welcome. This is great. I always record this, and I know a lot of people, there's no time I could make that everybody can make it. So if you're watching this later as a recording, welcome. And feel free, it's important to leave me comments in the comment field. In the chat, anything you leave, I won't see it after this is done. So if you want something that you want to answer to later, or you want to make a comment that lasts, put it in the comment field in YouTube. Really, it'll stay there. I always read my comments, and I can usually get to them every day, but if not, I might miss a day and get back to it a day after. But you'll hear from me if you leave a comment. Unless it's something really off the wall. Occasionally I get people who say something I just don't know how to answer, so I usually just don't do anything. By the way, quick, I just found these recently. Let me see if I can get it so where it's not too blurry. These people tell me all the time that they have a hard time holding on to their pick. And it's this thing where you don't want to grasp the pick too tight because it makes strumming hard. But if your finger's too loose and it slips out, of course, there's another problem. Worse if it goes in your sound hole. This makes it a little sticky, or rough, I should say. It's not really sticky. I put them on my picks. I love it. It works great. In the past, I used to drill a hole in my picks. Let me see if I have one. I don't have one handy, but the little hole would give me something to kind of grasp onto a little bit. And I will say this, it doesn't take the place of learning to use the pick properly. It takes practice, but it helps. It's a little nudge. They're called monster grips, and I recommend them. No affiliate links or anything like that. I don't know how to do that yet, but I just thought I'd share that with you. It's something that I'm enjoying. I put them on my picks recently. Next question. Can you play fingerstyle with a pick? Yes. And I'll demonstrate right now. I'm holding the pick with my index finger and my thumb, and I'm going to use these two fingers to finger pick. Matter of fact, let me get my guitar going here. You guys see that? Now I can show you. But now I can use the pick to strum too. Or go back to finger picking. The nice thing about this is, first of all, I can always strum or go back to picking because I got my pick right here. But the other thing is I can kind of enhance the bass note with the pick. My thumb is going to make a little softer, rounder bass note. Not bad, they're just two different sounds, and I can make it louder with the pick. The downside is I've eliminated this finger from my finger picking patterns. There we go. And I don't like that all the time, so I don't always use a pick when I'm finger picking. As a matter of fact, very seldom, but occasionally. If it's a pattern that I can get by with these two fingers easy, and I want the bass to come out, I use the pick, especially if I'm going to go into some strumming. But for the most part, I'm going to leave my index finger free, and so I can use all three of these fingers for a finger picking pattern, or especially for playing melody and chords together. Good question. Here's another one. Yochanan says, any advice on getting back into playing? I took a break during a hectic few weeks, and although I do pick up my guitar a few times a week to practice, I find it hard to jump back into the Real Guitar Success website, the lessons, basically. And yes, you're not alone. I've been through this many times in my life. I've been playing for 40 years now, and there's been ups and downs. I've had to go away from it for a while, maybe even months at a time. Once I was traveling through Asia, and I just couldn't bring the guitar. So for everybody, it's a little different, but I'll tell you two things that are universal. First of all, is you got to let go of the expectation that you're going to be right where you left off. And everybody kind of knows that, but pay attention to it, because I would kind of fool myself. I'm not worried about it. I know I got to work on it. And then I get frustrated. At this point, it's because I wasn't being honest with myself. I really wanted to get back to where I was like that. You want to start slow and try to get a groove going in your practice schedule. What I mean by that, instead of practicing once or twice a week, you have very little chance of getting something that sounds like where you were quickly. And that's just a formula for being discouraged. Do it a little every day, maybe even 10 minutes, and try to get a groove going there, a habit, I should say, of practicing, not once, twice a week, because you can't create a habit out of that. Every day, maybe if you skip one day, you can do that. But in the beginning, I usually, when I'm trying to develop a habit, I'll do it every day for a period of time, maybe even 30 days. Something small, something you can realistically do. And then I'll back up to maybe 5 days a week out of 7 in a week. With practicing, I practice 6 days a week right now. I take off on Sundays. But when I was trying to get the habit of practicing a little bit every day, I made sure I would do it every day for 30 days just to make it easy on me. In other words, once you get in the habit, it's easier to do it. It's a struggle if you do it once and you let 3 or 4 days go by and you don't have a habit going, so you have to consciously use willpower to get yourself back into practicing. And in the beginning, it's not fun because you're playing stuff, it doesn't sound good. So it is willpower to get yourself back in there practicing. Put the focus on not how I'm playing, but am I making my commitment? Am I keeping up with my commitment I made to myself? Am I doing my 10 minutes today? And keep orienting yourself to, what's the terminology I've heard before? Chop wood, carry water. Just the process of keep doing it, not on the results, on how good I'm getting. On the process, chop wood, carry water. Just every day, do what you need to do, and it will pan out. So that said, I would also recommend in the Real Guitar Success, you might want to go back and review some of the earlier stuff. What inevitably happens, and I know this is probably the case here, is you left at stuff that was kind of challenging. And then when you come back, if you go right back to that, not only do you have the challenge that you left with, but the gap that you haven't played for a while adds to that. It makes it even more frustrating. Go back, review some stuff. It's a great chance to review and kind of get back up to where you were. You'll find it kind of fun because you'll find some things that do come quickly and you can feel a little bit successful. So I hope that helps. Feel free to ask more questions if you're here live. I'd love to hear more. Next question. Could you explain the proper use of a capo? And this is a two-part question. Let me see. Let me grab a capo. So there are many uses of a capo. And I'm divided here. I'm not sure if you're asking how to actually put on the capo or why would you want to use a capo. I'll kind of do both. I want to mention also I have many lessons in the Real Guitar Success membership. If you are a member, Antonio, I'll make sure and put a link somewhere in here so you can get access to that. And when I say lessons, different aspects of how to use a capo and then ways of practicing that. And that's the big thing. I remember when people told me what to do with a capo, it didn't do anything for me until I messed around with it for quite a while and I watched how other people used it and got kind of some practice with using it. The biggest reason people use a capo is to change the key of a guitar, of a song or a chord progression. And a lot of that has to do with singing. They want it because, so let's say I'm playing a song with C chord and a G chord, and it's a low for my voice. I might put a capo on right here. I just raised it up 2 half steps, 1, 2, and now the song is a little higher. I'm still playing a C chord formation, but I've just raised it up, and maybe that's going to work better for my voice. You can keep doing that, but of course, when you get the capo up in here, the tone of the guitar is very high pitch, and that you might not want that tone. So it usually works for changing keys kind of right in this area. And I combine that with instruction on kind of the theory of how to change keys and how to actually, take a C chord and turn it into another key. That combined with using a capo is usually very effective. The other reason people use capo is sometimes they're playing with 2 guitars and they'll play a chord. One person will put a capo on and then it'll make everything a little higher, kind of like the sound more like a mandolin or something. And then when they play together, it adds some nice coloring, makes it a little more interesting. Let me see, any other use for capo? This is not common, but some people will take their guitar, tune it down to make the strings a little bit looser, tune it down maybe just a half step. I usually hear a half step, some people a whole step, but a half step means just 1 fret. Then they'll put, if they want to play with a YouTube video or something, they want to be in the same key, they'll put the capo on here. Now it's just brought it up to the same pitch as the guitar was before they tuned it down a half step. So you can play along with either somebody else or with a YouTube video or something that's not going to change for you. But otherwise, when you tune everything down a half step, it makes it easier for the guitar to press down. So if you're not playing with somebody else where you need to be in tune, it's a little easier to play. If you go too far down, it kind of sounds weird, but a half step's okay. Now, when you put on the capo, here's the thing, and this will help with your next question, Antonio. Do we have to retune the guitar when you put on the capo or take it off? And if so, why? I understand the capo is like a fixed bar. It's kind of like going up in here. But the question is, when you put on a capo, do you have to like tune the guitar up? And yes and no. If you're careful and you put on the capo like this, and it's a good capo, by the way, chances are no. This is why people will pay for a more expensive capo. The cheaper ones tend to pull the strings to the side when you put them on. And a more expensive capo tends to press straight down so that it doesn't go out of tune so much. In this case, no, I don't have to retune. But if your capo is like one of those rubber band ones that kind of, when you put it on, is pulling the strings, it's going to go out of tune and you need to get it back into tune. Same thing when you take the capo off. It goes back or it'll pull it back. So you have to kind of get the tuning, tweak it up a little bit. This is a Diodario capo, by the way, in case you're wondering. And they make great capos. A good capo costs somewhere around $20, 15, 20-ish, that kind of thing. Cheap capos are $5, $4, maybe 6, 7. So, good. No, I don't have to retune. And, part of that too is I'm careful when I put on the capo to open it up, put it all the way on, and then press down. I don't want to start letting it clasp before I get all the way down and pull the strings. So I'm careful when I do that. It's a habit for me, but you might need to practice that until it gets to be a habit. When I go down, I make sure the capo is open all the way and it goes straight down on the strings. Close to the fret, too far back, I'm likely to get, that. Good. Good. Okay, and I'll put, again, I'll get a link in there in case you're already a member of Real Guitar Success. You'll get a whole bunch of lessons on how to change keys and how to use capo. Good question. And I've got one more from Katie. it has been very difficult to sing, even hum and strum simultaneously. Any tips? So keep in mind, Katie, you're doing two different things. It's kind of like rubbing your belly and patting your head, but more complex. Rubbing your belly and patting your head, you're just doing this. When you're strumming and changing chords, you've got two hands going, and you're trying to keep track of what you're singing. Now, there's pitch involved in singing. So I don't know how good of a singer you are, but for me, I'm not a great singer, so I really kind of have to pay attention more to the singing. Maybe somebody who's really experienced singing, less so. But now you've got not only the melody, which is the pitch of the notes, but you've got the words, you've got the rhythm, where they fit with the chords. There's a lot going on. That said, it's very doable. You see people do it all the time, but it's not easy. And expecting it to be easy is bound to lead to frustration. The main thing you can do with that is to break it down to small pieces and try to get some of the parts. So for an example, if I were learning a song and I'm going to sing it eventually, I would first just make sure I could strum the song in time, maybe with a YouTube video so I could see if I'm, slowing down or speeding up. But if not, at least with, my foot tapping without bulking and changing the chords. Because you see, if I can't quite change chords on time and I'm trying to keep track of the words and the melody, it's too much. It's too many things going on at one time. You ever been to a three-ring circus where they got three different things going on and you're trying to pay attention to all three? Well, you don't have to do anything except put your attention there. But when you actually have to do something, that's really hard to do unless some of it becomes automatic. So what you try to do is pick little pieces and get them to be automatic. So when you put them back together, you're not trying to put energy into all these things at once. If you're having a hard time changing one chord to the other, go and practice that change first. If you're having a hard time matching the words with the song, in other words, with the chord changes, but you can change the chords okay on time, practice just humming and do a little parts of the song at a time and get it so that you can change the word right with the part of the chord that changes as well. So break it down. Don't just keep banging through from the beginning to the end of the song. And that's what a lot of my students would keep doing. They'd keep going through the whole song, but they couldn't work on any part at a time because there was too much. Keep in mind, when you're doing this again, is this appropriate for where you're at? I'm not saying you can't try something that's too hard, but you're banging your head against a wall if you pick a song that has many parts that are difficult to play and you're trying to sing and play it at the same time. Use some wisdom in terms of, picking easier songs, getting good at being able to strum and sing a song as simple as possible if you're just getting going. 2 chords at the most. I might even, if you can find a song with 1 chord, go with 2 chords because then you have to practice the changing. Simple folk or children's songs or something. Trying to pick a song that has a lot of chords and you're just trying to get the hang of singing and practicing is probably over the top. It's more than you can be expected to learn. Those are some ideas. Maybe you guys have some ideas. If you do, put them in the comments. I did make a video with my assistant, Ami, she's a great singer and plays and sings very well. And she had a lot of great ideas. I will put a link to that video. I would highly encourage you watch that. She has a series of tips that she goes through on kind of how to approach a song if you're going to be singing it, what to do first, second, third, and fourth, and fifth. Her and I do it a little differently, but I really enjoyed the way she went at it, and I thought it was a good compliment to kind of how I think about playing and singing a song. She has more experience than me, so I would actually defer to her and then maybe look at some of the things that are different. Now, I'm going to go over to the chat. So if you have a question, it's a good time to add it there if you haven't already. I'm looking for questions that start with the word question. I have a lot of comments here. Okay, the first one is, sir, do you have a Facebook group? I don't right now. I did at one time and I gave up on it. I just don't use Facebook myself, so it was tedious for me to go in there and answer questions. I'm not ruling it out. I might try it again in the future. I'm not against Facebook, but I do answer comments on YouTube. And of course, if you're a member of my Real Guitar Success, I usually get back to you within 24 hours, any questions that you have. Can you practice scales right away is the next question. I think I understand that you're asking if you're just learning guitar, are scales a good thing to start off with? And I would say in general, no. Scales are not your best way to start, with some caveats. I think scales make some good warm-up exercises. And I think it's important when you're first learning, even chords, is to do something to just get your fingers on the right place in the right time. I usually start off with a kind of a simple exercise like this. So it's simple enough to memorize, and the student can practice and put attention on just getting the finger in the right place, not on a complex exercise. And that translates into when you make a chord, your fingers start learning where they have to go to make the note sound good in the chord. I still practice exercises like that. They're a little more complex than that one, but now I'll go up and down the neck and I'll use my pinky a lot. I usually start off without the pinky because that's hard on students. Scales can be used the same way. Let's say a basic C scale. I think it makes a great warm-up exercise, even for a brand new beginner. I would still go with this basic one fret at a time to start because it's a little simpler. It doesn't engage the intellect. I want to get the student using their fingers and getting connection with that sound and not constantly questioning in their mind, is it right? Am I doing it right? That kind of thing. So I'm looking for something I can get that very automatic and just focus on the sound and getting the sound right. Later on, scales I think are important, especially if you want to improvise. They're actually, I think, very important if you want to play improv guitar. But if you're just learning chords and folk style guitar, use maybe a few scales as a warm-up. They're good ear training because they train your ear to hear the notes that are in that key. But in general, I wouldn't put a lot of attention there, maybe just a little bit. Next question. How are we doing? Is the sound good on? Let me know in the comments if you guys can hear me good. I'm using some technology I think I got it now. It took me a few false starts, but I need feedback. Let me know. Mark, question. Oh, hi, Robert. Ideas for finding moved on me. Get back here. New comment moves everything up right when I was reading it. Where'd Mark go? Question. Ideas for finding a study buddy. Ooh, I've never had that question before, but I think it's a great idea. Let me think about that, Mark. And if anybody else has ideas, put them in the comments on the YouTube video. Again, the chat will get lost, but I'm sure you guys have some ideas on how to find a study buddy. I haven't done that in a long time. Let me think about that. Let me go on for now, and I'll come back to that question, Mark. Greetings from South Africa, Fortune. Wow. Question, any tips to make a quick switch from chord to chord? Okay, that's kind of the same question, the problem switching chords. And I already talked about that, so I don't want to go back into that. But I will put a link in the recorded version of this that will go to lessons that'll talk more about that as well. And more important, give you some things to practice. Sir, is it better... he's asking what's the best type of capo. So there are three that I usually am exposed to. One is the rubber band type that you stretch across, and they're cheap. That's the advantage. But I don't like them. They tend to pull the strings and get them out of tune really quickly. Then you've got this type. I don't know what to call it, but it has a spring. Kaiser is the most famous brand for this, but D'Addario basically is using the same brand. I don't think there's a copyright on the style of capo. And this is a D'Addario capo. I really like this. It's easy for me to grab. It's got this big lever on top. And this one, unlike the Kaiser one I was using, has a little adjustment so you can make the tension different, stronger or weaker. And I've got it to where I like it for this guitar. But if it's a different guitar, maybe my classical, and it has a wider neck and a little different, I might adjust the tension to fit that guitar. Then there's another type. Shub is the most famous type. It doesn't have the big thing on top, but it works really well. They're good capos. Shub is the most famous brand for that. But I think D'Addario makes a similar capo to that also. And you adjust it again, but it doesn't have this big thing, and it clamps on without the top. The nice thing is it doesn't get in your way when you're moving around. It's a little harder to grab and move if you need to, but you don't usually have to move the capo that much. So I would say it's as good as this capo. Good question. Morgan asks, in an F minor bar chord, it takes me a lot of pressure to get all the notes to ring out. Should it take that much pressure? Morgan, so F minor bar chord is this. Okay, let me think of how to answer this question. You do want to get to where you can make just enough pressure to make it sound good and no more, so your hand doesn't get too tired. First of all, take a look at your guitar. Are the strings like really high off the fretboard? Maybe your guitar needs adjustment. A guitar that's not adjusted, even for me, can make my hand tired very quickly because I have to press harder. But what's more likely I've seen in a lot of cases is both, actually. A lot of students come in with guitars that really need adjustment. They bought as cheap as they could get by, a used one or a cheap guitar from a store, but the strings are really high. And the necks tend to move because the wood, especially in cheap guitars, the wood is not seasoned properly and tends to move and make the strings high or buzz over time, even if you don't change anything. So you do want to check your guitar, but a lot of it has to do with technique. And it takes some practice. I teach students to practice bar chords sort of in pieces, and I have a whole course step by step. Get used to your finger and get strong. When you make the bar, angle your finger back a little bit so it kind of makes it more rigid. Then practice these separate. I have students practice partial bar chords and then put them together and then practice exercises. It takes time. This is one of the biggest stumbling blocks I see with students. They're doing fine playing folk chords and strum, and then they try and learn bar chords, and it's like starting over again. It is hard. It takes persistence and a lot of repetition, doing it over and over, and small adjustments. Most students can make the adjustments just by listening and feeling what's happening and doing a little at a time. So practice a little every day and try to mimic is the word, the videos that you see with lessons on how to make the bar chords properly. An F minor bar chord is actually one of the easier bar chords, I would think. It tends to be a little easier when you're making chords up here. So you might want to, by the way, practice an A minor bar chord so you can get that and then move it back to the F sharp minor because the tension is less up in here. So I have students practicing bar chords usually up in here first and then moving back. F is one of the first ones that students need, and it's one of the harder ones because it's all the way up here against the nut. This is actually one of the harder bar chords, only harder being like a B flat or a B bar chord. These are some of the harder ones. So I digress a little bit. I hope that helped, Morgan. Jeremy, any suggestion on playing with shaky hands? I think just need to relax more. Yes, and go easy on the coffee. When I was in the university, I discovered coffee. And man, I could practice 2-3 times longer if I drank even just a little bit of caffeine. Coffee sometimes, but sometimes Dr. Pepper. I was like a greenie to caffeine, so it really affected me. Now, cup of coffee, no big thing, right? Yeah, probably relax. Though I will say, my hands are not all that steady like they used to be when I was 30 and 40 years old. I'm 65 now. This is life. I would say, yeah, relax. Go easy on the caffeine if you think that might be causing some of it. But, just accept that that's part of the game. You're you're going to have to work with shaky hands if that's the way you are. Sound is good. Doug, thank you. Let's see, we got a question here. Does Travis picking really replace strumming? Xander asked this question. Well, no, it doesn't at all. It's sort of like saying, do apples replace oranges? No, apples are apples and oranges are oranges. So Travis picking gives you a sound and strumming gives you a different sound. Some songs are going to work better this way and some songs are going to work better this way. Depending on what you want to play. I mean, if you only want to do finger picking, that's a real thing. Why not? But if you want to be a kind of a rounded guitar player, learn to use a pick and strum smoothly. Matter of fact, you might even want to learn how to do some bass notes with your pick. And learn how to finger pick. Different patterns. Travis picking, basic folk style patterns, simple things like... And you want to take it up a notch, learn fingerstyle guitar. We play melody and chords together. Okay, next question. Let me see here. What string size do you use? Arnold is asking, what string size? I'm using a light gauge on this guitar. I am using a brand called Diodario. As a matter of fact, I know the model number because it's kind of a very popular model. It's EJ16. It's a popular model. And I remember I went into the guitar shop and I asked him to adjust my guitar. And he looked at the guitar and says, "Oh, you're using EJ16s." Yeah. So it's like a common Diodario size light gauge phosphor bronze. They make different metal compositions. Phosphor bronze is kind of the most stable in terms of tone. I highly recommend them. But many brands are good. I wouldn't get too stuck on that brand. Basically, light gauge phosphor bronze strings is what I'm using. Now, on acoustic guitars, that's pretty much what I always use. On my nylon string guitar, I do use a heavier tension. I want a fuller, punchier sound. And nylon strings tend to be easier to press down anyway. Medium gauge is stronger. It's good for more volume, but doesn't necessarily get you a better sound. Light gauge sounds, extra light are great for beginners because they're easier to press down, but they don't sound as good to me. Unless I was just playing a lot of lead guitar on my acoustic, I prefer to go up a gauge to light gauge. That's kind of a nice all-round good string for acoustic guitar. Good question. Now I'm going to go back and see if I missed any questions. If I missed your question, you want to re-ask it, feel free. And it really helps if you start with the word question, because that's probably, if I missed it, that's probably why. Oh, I see one. I have, because I see a question mark in the, I have an old Jasmine guitar, 12 years, and would getting new, okay. I have an old Jasmine guitar. Would getting a new guitar like another Jasmine be worthwhile? Danny boy, I don't know those model guitars, so I couldn't compare them. Getting a new guitar is always fun. I don't know what your old guitar is like, so I couldn't say. It might also be worth taking your guitar to a guitar shop and getting their opinion on, can I make this sound better and easier to play? New strings, a setup, closer to the neck, no buzzing. That might be just what you need. Might make your guitar better than the new model. Though, again, I don't know. I can tell you in general, if you have a $100 guitar and you're moving up to a $600 guitar, you're probably going to get a much better guitar at $600. That's the way it is. And when you're buying more expensive guitars, the amount of better you get starts going smaller, just like cars. You know, a Mercedes-Benz is not 1,000 times or 100 times better than a Volkswagen Bug, but it certainly is better. It's the difference for what you pay starts getting smaller and smaller. A lot of guitars, even when I just bought a $800 electric guitar. I took it right to the shop right away and had them adjust it because it doesn't come fully adjusted from the factory. They just, even if it did, it wouldn't stay that way from shipping and sitting on their sales floor and all that. Adjustment's a big thing. Get the guitar set up and with new strings, then decide if you're ready for a new guitar. Or if it's broken and not playing right, go for it. I love getting new guitars. What can I say? You'd have a hard time getting me to tell you don't buy a new guitar. Tim, I see a question. Thank you. Stage fright. I never feel afraid on stage. Oh, no, that's not what he said. He said, when I play and practice by myself, no problem. When I'm in front of others, I tried to record a video to post on Real Guitar Success. Yes, I get it, Tim. And once the cameras came on, well, that's a great question. I'm surprised more people don't ask me that. Tim, kudos for asking it because you're trying. And I think most people just don't even want to go there. Just the fact that you're trying to make a video for the Real Guitar Success, and I highly recommend you do. Knowing what I know now, if it were me in my place, I would pay a lot of money to get to be able to do that, to put my stuff on the website and have other students or the teacher give me some feedback, even just say, hey, good job, that kind of thing. Anyway, the best, and everybody experiences stage fright to some degree. Of course, some people more than others. It was a real hard one for me to go on stage and play in front of an audience. Now I do it, and most people would say they cannot tell I'm nervous. The truth of the matter is, I am, and I wouldn't want it to completely go away. That nervousness is also partly what makes it exciting and gives me a certain spark when I'm playing live. But when I'm playing on stage, I can function fine. At first, it was really hard for me to be on stage and look at other band members and keep track of everything because I was so nervous. It's desensitizing. You know, I'm sure you've heard of when people are afraid of spiders, they have this whole graded way of getting them used to a spider seeing it. I don't know exactly how it works, but, you know, then they'll put it in a bag and put it on their hand, and then they'll get to the point where the spider can crawl on their arm and they're fine with that. Same thing with stage fright. What you do is you find ways to kind of challenge yourself, but in small increments. One way for some people is to make a recording with your camera and put it on a website like YouTube or something. You don't have to do that. You can, there is even easier. You can say to yourself, I'm going to make a recording that's not going anywhere. First of all, that takes some of the pressure on. I have to get it just right for everybody to see it. And get used to just recording it on your camera, knowing you're going to delete it or just for your own use. I do think this is helpful to make recordings and just kind of archive them to look back on and say, oh, I've really made some improvement. You could try to get somebody you're close to that you're not afraid is going to criticize you and say, could you just watch me play this? I've done that more than once. I've even found putting a mirror and playing for myself in the mirror gives me that little step. Now it's a little more than just playing when I can't see myself. And keep moving up. For you, it might be a little different than it is for me. Try playing it in front of a mirror, the song. Try asking your significant other, hey, could you just watch me play this? I'm working on getting to where I can play it on a video. Try recording it with no intention of posting it. Then maybe try recording it with the intention of posting it on YouTube, but making it completely so nobody can see it, private. So again, you've kind of upped the ante a little bit because it's actually, I could change it to public, but I'm not, that's not a must. I could just post it private. It's just an archive. YouTube, by the way, is a great place to store videos. It's kind of neat. They're giving you free storage and you can keep track of them. But I digress. The idea is to keep finding ways to kind of take a little bit of a step, feel nervous, get to where you're comfortable with, and then take a little bit more and a little bit more. What you don't want to do is start from here, jump to here, say, wow, this is really scary, and then give up. That's why the steps. I mean, probably if you jump this far and, played in front of an audience of 20 people and you did it enough times, but more likely you're going to quit and not do it again because it was so scary and you fumbled and you feel embarrassed, that kind of thing. I hope that helps, Tim. I actually have a post on that, but I think I pretty well covered everything that's in that post. That's pretty much what I said. Oh, Tim says he's worried I might watch the video and tell him to sell the guitar because there's no hope. No, that's not going to happen. The thing about playing guitar is, first of all, you don't have to impress anybody. Wherever you are is actually fine. It's for your own enjoyment and your own self-development. Anything that you do right now is where you're at, and that's fine. And the process of getting just a little better is what we're after, not I'm here and I need to be here. It's what's that next step? Where can I challenge myself to make this exciting and a journey and keep improving myself? Next question. I see a question here. Why does a cutaway guitar? Is it just visual, or is there a reason for it? This is a cutaway, so good, I can demonstrate this. It's so you can play up higher on the neck. This comes in handy. Let's say I'm playing this chord. I probably couldn't play that one if there wasn't that cutaway. See where my hand is right there? Or how about this one? Now, most often for me where it comes in, if I'm playing some kind of lead guitar, I couldn't do that without the cutaway. Now, you don't want to just run that by a cutaway, because if you're not doing that, I think it does take a little bit off of the sound. That little bit does damage the sound. So when I'm playing my classical guitar, or it's a flamenco guitar, I don't want a cutaway because I don't even want that little bit of difference in sound, and especially for recording on CDs. But for playing live, I really like cutaway because I'd rather have the facility to get around more easily on my guitar. Yes, cutaways. I've had both over a period of time, cutaways, not cutaways. And depending on what you're doing with them, they can be useful, but if you're not going to need it, probably don't worry about it. But virtually no one plays that high up. I wouldn't get too fixed to that idea, Dan. It's okay if you want to hold on to that, but maybe you haven't heard enough guitar players or in different styles of music, jazz, certain types of blues, gypsy jazz. Yeah, there are enough guitar players that do, but probably not in the style of music you're listening to right now. When strumming, is it compulsory to string the strings that are... Okay, I get it. This person, I can't pronounce the name, I'm sorry. And I can't tell if it's a woman or a man because it's just a cat in the icon. But I think what this person... Oh, Clementine, I see it. Clementine, what she's asking is, when you're looking at a diagram, you see the O's and the X's. Should you play the strings that have X's or not? Or what do the O's and X's mean? So the O, when you're seeing a chord diagram, I wish I had a picture to put up, but I don't. I hope most of you are familiar with chord diagrams where it's a little chart with a fingering for a chord and it has O's and X's usually on top. Some people put them on in different areas, but the idea is the O says that's an open string. You're going to play that string. X means you're not going to play that string. And for the most part, yeah, that's what you aim for. Sometimes it's not worth worrying about too much because certain strings, even though there's an X, and if you accidentally hit it, it doesn't make a big difference, so it's not worth stressing over. But that's the idea, is when you're making a diagram for chords, is to put O's and X's to show which ones are open strings and which ones are not being played. Okay, and I think that's it for the questions. If I missed, one person says, and I can't pronounce it, Jane Nam, why aren't you answering my question? I don't know what your question is, Jane Nam. If you want to put it again, I will try to answer it. I didn't see it. I'm a bass person, but I still play acoustic. Oh, Cow Key says, I'm a bass person, I still play acoustic guitar. So that's all the questions I see. And again, I'm looking back over, but I don't see any questions that are sticking out to me. I'm going to do the drawing for now. And if you have a quick question, I will answer whatever gets put on here before we close up for today. So you got just a few minutes to add a question. And again, this is for members of the Real Guitar Success membership, where every month, among other types of lessons, there's a series of practice sessions, one for every day of the week, and the students go through it and complete. Just watch a session, try it for 10 minutes, check it off, or decide you want to save it and practice it more later or spend more time. It's up to you. But the idea is to at least watch each of the lessons and spend 10 minutes on it, and then check it off, and you get entered in the drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. And so let's see who got the gift card this month. Larry, congratulations. Larry Griffin, you're going to get an Amazon gift card. And all of you who have completed the 20 sessions, you're a little better guitar player for it, and I commend you. Good work. Not only that, but you've shown that you're action takers, and taking action is a lot better than not when it comes to learning to play guitar. So, let me see if we got any last minute questions. By the way, if you have any questions that weren't answered here, please put them in the comments on YouTube, and I will get them answered. I won't see this chat later on, but I will see all the comments. So please leave me some comments. And even if you just want to say, hey, here's what I'm working on, or something in the comments, I love to read the comments on YouTube. So I know how to play a pick, but I find it difficult to finger picking. I think that's the question. I know how to use a pick, but I find finger picking difficult. Yes, finger picking there's more going on. And you would probably need to learn step-by-step finger picking. When I teach finger picking to students, I start them with really simple things. If they can already play chords, we got to start with a chord. I start with a very simple pattern, and then practice changing chords with a pattern that's very simple. Then we'll move on to more complex patterns, all the way to Travis picking would be a very complex pattern. So we'd work up to that little by little. It is different than strumming the guitar. Good question. And Kauki says he'd recommend using a nylon string. I often use a nylon string for finger picking, but it's not a mandatory to have nylon strings for finger picking. I use steel string too. Oh, another question, Xander. How do you practice scales, fingerstyle? What pattern or fingers are used? I don't quite understand that question, Xander. How do you fingerstyle practicing scales? When I practice scales, they're one note at a time. There's no pattern. In other words, here's a scale. And I'm practicing with just two fingers back and forth. Maybe that answers your question. Advice. Do you have any advice for a thrash metal song? I would say I have absolutely no advice for a thrash metal song. That's not my genre, so I couldn't help with that. Mimi, I'm 15 years old. I began playing guitar 6 months ago. I want to know, how much time should I spend practicing? Great question, Mimi. I think in the beginning, you want to balance with consistency. I would recommend practicing a little bit every day, at least 6 days a week. And it could be as little as 10, 15 minutes a day. Of course, you can practice more, but I'm concerned, particularly when somebody's just starting, that they're going to set their goal too high, feel discouraged because they don't keep it, and then let it go to either quit or just make it really haphazard because they can't keep an hour that they said they're going to practice. Most students cannot really focus and practice for a full hour when they're first starting. They're playing stuff they can't play, and it gets frustrating really quickly. 10, 15 minutes at a session, and really pay attention to it. Don't watch TV or look at your text or whatever. Really put your attention 10, 15 minutes, and then you can expand it over time. As you get more things to practice, it's more fun. Good question. I'd love to hear. Mimi, you're already ahead of the game, because a lot of teenagers, I notice, don't even want to make a commitment to practicing every day. They just want to get a song and learn to play a song and then another song, and then get frustrated because it doesn't go the way they want. Practicing every day will make a big difference. You're developing habits and skills that will apply to playing songs. While covering a song, I don't know the strum pattern. Is it okay to... Can I do it without doing the exact same strum pattern? I would say absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I would dumb it down, make it as simple as possible to learn the song. You can always up the strum pattern, make it more complex later. But it's trying to do a strum pattern that you can't do and learn the song is too much all at once. I would recommend actually when you're first learning a song, just do something straight down like this, just to get the chords in the right place with the song. And if you're going to try and sing it, work on singing it with that simple strum pattern. Then add a little more complex strum, and if the song uses a very complex strum, practice the strum separate and then add that into the song. The sound of my guitar is low. I'm a beginner. What do you suggest? She has this person has a nylon string guitar. That's the nature of that guitar. It's quieter. If you want a louder sound, you'd want a steel string acoustic guitar like this. Don't put steel strings on your Yamaha C40. It'll break the guitar likely. It'll break the guitar and it won't sound that great. It's not made for metal strings. It's a different type of guitar, acoustic guitar that you want. Okay. Let me see. I got a few more questions here. I'm learning scales. Can you demonstrate how they are useful? Having a hard time seeing the point in scales. So I talked a little bit about this. If you're a beginner, Danny, I don't recommend that as your main practice when you're first starting out. But they can be used as a good warm-up, and they're useful. Later on, if you want to improvise and you can play basic guitar, you're going to need to learn the scales that are appropriate to the style of music that you want to play. If it's heavy metal, there are certain types of pentatonic scales that are places you're going to start. If it's folk or bluegrass, I'd go probably some different types of scale, major, pentatonic, but likely, that kind of thing. And Xander would like to know a good practice routine. So that will be different depending on your level, the style of music you want, to some degree the type of the guitar, and maybe even your, how old you are, if you're just starting out as a teenager, and how much time you have to practice. So I couldn't give you an exact practice routine, even if we were talking one-on-one. I'd have to know a lot more, maybe even see you play, that kind of thing. I would recommend, though, that you try to make a practice routine that starts from where you're at and works on things that you need to work on and then build on, and not just try to pick a song that you like and just work on that every day. That's a frustrating way to go about things. I do have lessons on my blog also that talk about how to kind of develop a practice routine. And again, it'll say there's a lot of variables here, but first thing to do is kind of decide where you're at and what you want to do, and then start looking at the areas that you need to work on to get there. And I'll get a link on the recording of this so that you can get access to that. You can search for it in the meantime. And I think we're getting to the end. Okay, it looks like we've covered all the questions that I can see. I think we're going to close up for today. Thank you all for joining me. I will make a recording of this, and it'll take me a day or two my editor is going to organize the questions so that you can find them easily on the video. It takes them a day or two to get to that, but we'll get it on the website. And I look forward to seeing you all next month. We do this the first Thursday of every month. One question I do have for you right now is I am thinking about adding a live lesson, not to take the place of this, but an actual live lesson on some subject of playing guitar where I can answer questions and make a demonstration or a particular lesson. What would you like me to learn if I were to do that? What would you like to see me learn? I've had a few things. Some people have told me that they like to learn like the pentatonic scale positions all up and down the guitar neck. And of course, there's a variety of different subjects that I could cover. But if you could put something in the comment field of YouTube, I will be able to see what kinds of things people like, and I can make a decision of when and how to make that happen. So that's an idea. Put a comment in the comment of YouTube. I will see it later. Again, the chat, I won't see these after we close up for today. thanks again for joining me. It's been a pleasure being here. I look forward to seeing you again soon, hopefully if not before the next Thursday, the first Thursday of next month. Bye for now.